We take the step out on our yes and watch. Only when we step out does the bridge begin to appear.
Derek is a powerful healer and soul restorer.
Your wings are big enough to hold everyone in them.
He just goes right to the core of whatever is your challenges and helps you rise above it.
More wealth, more health, more vitality, more of life.
You work with people in such a genuine, heartfelt way.
The energy that really empowered me is love, but when you see it getting back from somebody like him, there's no limit.
So that each and every one of us become the pure, clear channels of that divine destiny of greatness, so that we live a legendary life and leave a lasting legacy.
Derek is a teacher for whose time has come.
Hey, welcome to video 3 in the Awakened Wealth series. The real reason we earn what we do and not a penny more. Now, I'm Derek Rydell, founder of the Law of Emergence and author of the best-selling book Emergence, and now this powerful new system of how to create wealth consciously and consistently, and ultimately to put it on autopilot. Now, we've been on quite a journey. If you've been joining us for this video series so far, we've really learned a lot. We've really opened up a lot of really big shifts in our perceptions of the real nature of wealth, the real source of wealth, and how to begin to generate and activate this energy of wealth regardless of circumstances. And in the last video, we talked about the 7 gifts that give you everything, also known as the 7 wealth activators: giving out, giving away, giving up, giving in, giving thanks, giving to yourself, and forgiving. And if you hadn't had a chance to check that out and to get that ebook as well, please do that. It's a powerful framework that is really going to allow you to make this very practical, very pragmatic, and to start generating flow. And that's what we really learned about, that everything is energy, that energy is the substance of real wealth and abundance, and the more of it you can circulate and flow. The word flow is connected to the same word affluence. Current is currency. So the more you begin to activate this flow, the more affluence, the more currency, the more wealth and abundance you have in every area of your life. And to help you support that, we also talked about a deceptively simple but powerful strategy or tool called the 25 ways to manifest more, and how you begin to use this to create a fluency or a flow of the energy of your thought, to open up to inspired thinking and ultimately compelling right action. And then finally, we talked about the open secret to really long-term success, and it had to do with a commitment to this journey, to be all in on this bigger vision of wealth and abundance, not just kind of playing at the edges, not just putting your toe in the water, not just merely being interested, but to being committed. Commitment leads to character. Character leads to destiny. Not conditions. We learned that conditions don't determine our destiny, our character does. And our habits determine our character, and our commitment to a clear path leads to developing our habits, our character, and ultimately our destiny. So hopefully you check that out if you haven't already. And we're gonna dive in this video and really go deeper into the secret of infinite organizing power, which is really a gateway to unlimited abundance, and is a key principle that you need to understand, as well as a very powerful law that when you don't understand this law, even if you've done everything up to this point right and you've opened all your own channels, you're gonna find it's gonna feel like the world is shutting its door to you. And then we're gonna talk about a shocking study that's gonna change the way forever that you look at your clients or your boss or your spouse or really anybody that you interact with. And then finally, we're gonna talk about how to ask for what you want, how to charge what you're really worth, and how to do it without shame, without guilt, without fear, and without apology. Sound good? Are we having fun? I mean, can you feel the power that's generating here, that's beginning to grow here? Can you feel the possibilities? And so just again, take a breath. Maybe you've had a busy day, but you want to just let go of whatever has happened in the past. Release any concern for the future, and just allow your energy to drop down into your heart, down into your body, to become really present. This is your breakthrough moment. And we're going to first talk about infinite organizing power. Now, we've really talked a lot about the idea that consciousness, your consciousness, is the source of all the substance that makes up your life. That nobody and nothing outside of you ultimately is the source, that your consciousness is. And that you're beginning to circulate and radiate this energy of abundance into your life. But it's important to understand that while it comes from you, it often comes through channels. So yes, your consciousness is the source of all abundance, but it often manifests through channels, through your job, through your spouse, through your friends, through your family, through whatever. However, so everyone and everything is a channel, but nobody and nothing is the source. So it comes through people, but it does not come from them. That's a key principle that often your idea of how things should be fulfilled or where things should come from is profoundly limiting the possibilities. So if you're giving to your partner, or giving at your place of business, or giving to a friend, and then you sit back and wait for that particular channel to return something to you, for the flow to come back from that channel, that's a very big mistake that people make even when they begin to understand this. That's not how life works. For whatever reason, that channel may not be the right channel, they may not be a willing channel, but if you are willing to give unconditionally, to begin to circulate and open up all the channels we talked about with the 7 wealth activators, and you start to get that flow in your life, and you're just generating and giving and serving and shining and circulating, you don't look to any specific channel for it to come back. You may show up at work and you may give the best, more and more than they're even asking for, more than they're paying you for. And they may never say, wow, you're amazing, let me give you a raise, or wow, you're so giving and generous, let's throw a party for you, or whatever the case may be. But if you're doing that, and that particular channel is not willing or able to flow and circulate that back to you, then another channel will show up. Or if that environment can't expand to begin to operate at the level you're now circulating, you'll be moved out of that environment into a better one. And I tell a story about how I was a waiter and I was working at a job I hated. I had gone from being in this actor, up and coming, starring in movies and all this stuff, to having a spiritual opening and everything falling apart. And, as I talked about my story, cloistering myself in my apartment, and eventually I had to get a job. And I got a job as a waiter very reluctantly. I was humiliated because people would come in I'd been like in movies with, and I'd have to wait on them. And it was really embarrassing, really humiliating, and it brought up a lot of stuff in me. But I was beginning to understand this process and this principle of showing up and circulating, that whatever was missing was what I wasn't giving. And I was no longer going to wait for conditions to change to start being a generative being of the energy of abundance in my life. So I started showing up as if this was my dream job, and just giving and giving and giving 5-star service in a 3-star restaurant, and helping the other employees, and they were suspicious of me and they didn't know what I was up to, and I got fired. And I'm like, what? How did that happen? And so eventually they realized it was a mistake. They hired me back. And now I feel even worse because now I'm the guy that got fired, and people are like suspicious of me, wondering what I'm up to. And I began to again dig in and engage and serve and circulate and radiate this energy and be excellent and be creative and be all the things, give of my talent, give of my time, as we talked about in the 7 gifts. I began to really show up that way and circulate that. And I started to feel really good again, empowered, inspired. And then I got fired again. And I'm like, what? I'm getting like notes from corporate. People are like, talking about what a great job I'm doing. Customers are writing to the company, and I get fired. And the one manager who liked me said, the other manager, I think, thinks you're gunning for their job, and I think they kind of scapegoated you for something. You're cool, come back. So I was hired again. And now I'm like, really walking on eggshells at first, but I decide I'm all in. Something's happening here. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling more expanded. I'm actually feeling more abundant, even though I'm still working this, kind of crappy waiter's job. But I began to bring everything again to it. And now I was flying. I felt like I was living my destiny, because I was showing up and I was circulating all this energy of love and gratitude and celebration and inspiration and creativity and excellence. I wasn't waiting for anybody anymore. I didn't care what anybody thought of me. And I was flying, and I got fired a third time. And I was like, okay, this, what's the problem here? They're not giving back at all. It's not circulating back. Something's wrong. And I realized that what was happening is I kept expanding my channel and circulating more and more, and that channel simply wasn't capable of returning the flow to me. And that allowed me to have a little comfort, and I realized, okay, something's expanding and happening, and within a month of that, I got hired. And I went from making $50 a day to $1,000 a day. I went from waiting on people in a 3-star restaurant to being wined and dined in 5-star restaurants around the country. And to merely dreaming about giving my gifts, talents, and abilities to being paid well and respected and valued at that level. Now that happened like a month or so later. But the key is, so it came from a whole different channel I couldn't have imagined. But that didn't happen after I left that job. It happened while I was on the job. I was circulating, I was generating, I was showing up. There's a lot of flow and affluence in me. And eventually it reached a point where that channel couldn't handle it. It spun me out and it directed me to the channel that could, and my life blossomed to a whole new level of abundance. So that's the power here. So if I would have just continually felt like it had to come from that channel, I would have collapsed all of infinite organizing possibility into one. Like my story about getting the job on the commercial. That wasn't even in my purview. It wasn't even part of my self-concept. If I thought that it had to come from the channels that I was aware of, I would have greatly limited what the universe is possible, the infinite organizing power of the universe. So nobody and nothing is your source. Everybody and everything is your channel. You have infinite organizing possibility. The universe has an infinite variety of ways it can organize the way for that to flow back to you. So you don't look to anybody as the specific place. Okay, so you got that? It's pretty cool, huh? And now the other thing is that as you begin to work with the channels of your life, whether it's a client, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a child, etc., the very important thing is to really let them be the biggest channel possible. You have to not see them as merely a limited human being. You can't judge based on where they seem to be. Just like you cannot judge your bank account for how much abundance you have, because the dollar bills are symbols, they're not real wealth. Well, likewise, wherever that person's at, whether it's a client and you want to charge more, but they feel like they don't have enough to pay, and you feel like, oh my God, I'm taking something from them. The way you hold them and allow them to see them as a big and an infinite channel, the same way that you are, that determines how much they're able to allow to flow into their life and to flow back to you through that transaction. Now, there's a really powerful study that proved this. There was a school where they did this study, and they took a bunch of kids from a pool of kids, just average students. There was nothing particular about them. And they broke them up into 3 groups. There was the control group, which was just the average students. There was another group where they told the teacher, these are below average students. And there was another group where they told the teacher, these are above average. These are like some of the best students in the school. So there was 3 different teachers. One thought these were average, one thought they were below average, one thought they were above average. All the same pool of kids, right? At the end of a period of a semester or 2, they went back and they tested all these kids. And they got the final results, the grades, the tests. The ones that were in the average pool were still testing about the same. Average. Nothing really had changed. That's the control group. The ones that the teacher believed they were below average, they were testing below that median. They were below that baseline, some of them significantly. The ones where the teacher, and it was consistent enough, it was a statistically consistent sample. The ones where they were believed to be above average, they had scores that were some of the highest in the whole district. Now what changed? All the same kids, but the teachers believed these were average kids, these were below average, and these were above average. And so how they spoke to them, how they saw them, the box, the frame they held them in, determined how high the child would rise or how low they would sink. They would shrink to fit the small box, or they would rise to fit the bigger box. Now, why is this important? When you're working, let's say, with a client, and you have a particular, you're feeling like it's time to raise your rates or even to charge at all. For some of you heart-centered, spiritually minded people, you just give your stuff away. And you're like, yeah, but you know, these poor people, I mean, I don't want to be it's like taking money from a child, or it's like, I mean, they got to put food on their table. I don't want to take that from them. In that moment, you have just put them in the below average section. Do you see that? The way you're seeing them puts them in a box that is, first of all, a lie, and it's false, because hopefully you're learning this now. There's a source of infinite possibility. There's never a lack of resources, but there can be a lack of resourcefulness. And the ability to be more resourceful is based on the box you put someone in. If you put a child in a little box, they've tested this with children in other ways, where you see very little potential, they shrink to fit. When you see the grand potential, they rise to fill. And so when you see a client as being poor and broke and they don't have enough, then you actually are creating a very small box that if they're not more conscious than you, you're literally performing a form of malpractice on them. I know it's kind of harsh, but it's like a spiritual, psychological malpractice, because you are seeing them as small and they shrink to fit that, at least in terms of your relationship. But if you're willing to stand in the truth you're learning here and see them as the infinite individualized expressions of life and abundance that they are, tuned in and tapped into the same source of infinite creation, infinite possibility, now you've created a space. And if you're a transformational coach, even before you've sold them anything, you are now being a transformational agency or agent. You are turning that transactional relationship immediately into a transformational one. And you can begin to look at them when they say, oh, I can't afford it. I don't know. You can say, well, do you want it? Do you feel that yes? Do you want to say yes to your yes? Then step into it and prove and discover just how resourceful you really are. Because you have just as much connection to source as anybody does. And you can begin to talk to them that way with confidence. There's no manipulation. You're not trying to get anything from them. You're actually holding them and seeing them and meeting them as who they really are. And they will begin to be able to blossom to that if they're willing. So how you hold them is everything to whether or not they're able to play with you at that higher level, play with you, and pay for it with you. And then ultimately, you create a transformational space even before you've begun the transformational work, where they can begin to grow and blossom in ways that neither of you ever imagined. So this is a powerful, powerful paradigm to begin to bring. And you never have to feel guilty anymore when you ask for what you want or you charge what you're worth. You know that it's not coming from them. It's coming from you, but it's coming through them. And now as you hold them as that big channel and they're willing to play and circulate back to you, their channel gets bigger. And now they have more abundance, more power, more access in their own life. Are you starting to get this? I mean, can you see the service that you give somebody when you're willing to meet them that way? And ask for what you want and charge what you're worth, because you're actually giving them an opportunity to be a bigger channel. You start to get excited about that point in the conversation where many of you get nervous and scared and guilty. You're like, well, okay, so now we got to talk about how much it costs, and you're like all fumbling over it, and then you start talking yourself out of it, right? How would it feel if you never ever had to feel that way again? If you could stand with somebody so strongly, asking for what you want, really owning that and owning it for them, knowing that it's just creating a space where they could grow and rise in ways they've never imagined. Doesn't that feel good? That's what that kind of transactional interaction is going to begin to feel with. Whether it's charging something, asking your boss for a raise, asking your children to do more around the house, or asking your spouse for something, you're going to start to know that nobody is your source, everybody is your channel. And by the way, that means that all the good that's showing up in your life, whether it's your spouse bringing home the check, if you're enjoying that abundance, it means it's an activity of your consciousness. And that it's because of your consciousness that these things are showing up. Even if they're coming from other channels, you are the source of everything in your universe. And I remember this happened once. My wife, she had this really expansion in her own consciousness around abundance. And very shortly after that, I got one of my biggest deals ever. And it benefited her tremendously, right? And I realized it wasn't just me, it was her consciousness that was channeling through me as an instrument, because she was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And so for you that are stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads, and you kind of feel somewhat smaller or like a victim, like, you know, they're bringing home the bacon, now you can begin to realize, wait a second, no, I'm as much a part of this dynamic as they are. If I didn't have this consciousness, they wouldn't be able to show up that way in our life and our family either. Now, that doesn't mean you don't value and appreciate the channels, because they're willing to be a channel for you, absolutely. But you don't forget that you're the source of the good that flows into your life. And now once you understand this, you can start to joyfully and even excitedly ask for what you really want. Now, a couple little distinctions around this. Don't expect it to feel good when you start to practice this. Don't expect it to be comfortable. Don't expect you to believe it's possible. You know, to ask for what you want sometimes and start to charge what you're worth, you're gonna bump into that ego threshold again that we talked about earlier. Because you're starting to expand, and expansion and real change to the ego is equivalent to death, because the ego is a set of programs. And so if you really change, that structure gets disintegrated, it changes. So the ego fights for its life because it thinks you're in danger. And so it feels like anxiety, it feels like fear, it feels like, you know, the beliefs coming up, who am I? You know, who do I think I am? You know, am I really worth this? All that stuff comes up, and you start to go, wow, maybe it's true, maybe I shouldn't do that, maybe it's not right. Maybe I should just wait till I feel good about it, till I feel comfortable, till I feel confident. Remember we talked about this? You don't have to believe it to achieve it. You don't have to believe to ask. Asking is the way you open up the channel. Giving is the way you circulate the flow. Asking is the way you open up the channel. Open up all the channels around you. So you gotta ask. And then whatever that brings up in you, the fear, the doubt, the worry, the shame, the guilt, it's actually bringing it up so that it can be healed, integrated. It's already there. You're just not feeling it unless you're asking. So the asking starts to accelerate your own growth, your own evolution. And as we'll talk about in the final video, I'll tell you about how we're gonna help you, deal with all the shadows and the values conflicts and all the limited beliefs that get brought up when you start saying yes to your yes, when you start expanding and asking and opening up the channels of your life. You're gonna have a powerful opportunity to grow and become more of your real self than ever before. Now, one other little piece I wanna say about this is that it's important to know that a relationship is not 50-50. When you're asking for what you want, when you're in a relationship is a 200% deal. It's not like, well, I gave my 50% and I'm gonna wait for them. I brought it this far, now they gotta meet me. That's fine if you wanna be a victim. But if you wanna really own your universe and own your power and own your result, you have to take 100% responsibility for the result you want. So you ask, and you keep asking, and you negotiate. I mean, come on, if you have kids, you know what this looks like. It's like, Dad, can I have $5 to get some ice cream? No. Oh, come on, Dad, please, come on. I mean, I'll do this. No. Well, Dad, I mean, how about if I do this, Dad? And the child's just like weaving and bobbing and, negotiating. And eventually you're like, okay, right? The child understands what it means to take 100% responsibility for the result you want. So when you are asking, whether it's to have more time with your husband or to get a raise at work or whatever the case may be, you have to be willing to own the result you want and stay in the conversation and keep circulating, keep generating, and when the stuff comes up, you work on it and you ask again. As you do this, you're literally progressively expanding your channel and you're activating a greater flow. So sometimes it takes that process. But on the other side of that, you are not the same person. You're stronger, you have more resilience, more stamina, and your channel is permanently bigger. Cool? So we're gonna talk more again about how to deal with all the stuff that comes up in the 4th video, but you gotta ask. Now, when the ask is specifically about you wanting to charge more, wanting to charge it all, wanting to ask for a raise, I want to just talk about a few little very practical, specific steps and distinctions to help you kind of figure out what to charge and how to begin to charge more or charge what you're worth. Little fun little things you can do is start with sort of the baseline wherever you are and raise the price in your mind, until it gets to the point where it feels, oh my God, that's crazy, that's way too high. Then lower it again, keep lowering it until you go, oh my God, that's just way too low. So it's either like, oh my God, that's crazy, you feel scared, you feel nervous, you lower it until you're like, oh my God, that feels terrible, I'm depressed, it's not worth it. And then start raising it again, now that you kind of feel that tension. And you want to get it right to the point where you feel the tension, where you feel the stretch, but not so far that you're going to pull a muscle. That's your growth point. That's your growth spot. So whatever that amount is, that's the place you start. And again, it's a stretch, so it's still going to bring stuff up. It's still not going to always feel comfortable. But that's how you know to identify what is that next level for me. And then you step into it, and you ask, and you negotiate. Now, one of the things when you're asking and when you're charging, one of the things that, again, practical tips, like my story of asking for that higher amount, and then I just shut up. Ask and shut up at first. Tell them what it cost and then shut up. Otherwise, if you have not fully integrated it, you're gonna talk them out of the deal. It's gonna be like, so my rate is $100 an hour, whatever, and then before they even get a chance to think about it, you're like, and the thing about it is because you get this and you get that. I know, $100 seems like a lot, but let me tell you, when I first started, and it's like 5 minutes later, they're like, oh God, I gotta go, or they're just like, I don't think so, because you've literally backpedaled and talked yourself out of it energetically, vibrationally, and literally. So once you take that step and you make that ask, be quiet. Allow them to receive it. Allow them to respond. And then if they don't accept it at that level, there's other things you can do which is beyond the scope of this particular training. But the one thing you don't want to do, you can have different set points, different price points, things like that based on the package or whatever, or if you're making an offer to a boss for a raise. But you don't want to start becoming a used car salesman. Oh, well, did I tell you, by the way, did I say it's $100 an hour? What I actually meant was $50 an hour, and I'm going to throw in this transistor radio, and, whatever the case may be, this little rubber duck. And you lose price integrity and really integrity. And so you want to have the courage of your conviction. You may have some different price points, but once you ask, you stand in that. And if you're negotiating a different package, you want to keep price integrity, which means if you're giving a little, you want to make it up over here. And what that does is even if you do lower your price and say, well, if you get a package of hours like this, it's going to cost less, then maybe you give them less on this side, or you require some deeper contribution on their part. In that way, you maintain integrity. And it's very, very key. Integrity means to be one within yourself, integral, integrated. And if you're not in integrity, you're serving two masters. And when you are serving two masters, it is a house divided. It has no structural integrity, and it cannot stand. It'll collapse because there's not enough strength there. So you want to stand in that. And so it takes a little practice. The other final little piece I want to say about asking and charging is one little thing or little strategy to begin to confidently ask for what you're worth is look at whatever it is you're offering and begin to play with the offer, whether it's asking for a raise or charging a client, and work within yourself to organize this package or this offering until it starts to feel really good within you. If you're trying to charge $100 an hour, but inside you, when you look at what you're offering, you don't feel like it's worth it, it's gonna be very hard to make that claim or to make that request. But if you begin to look at it, and first of all, remember if you're hourly, you're not charging by the hour. It's not $100 for that 60 minutes. It's for the 10 years or whatever it took you and the thousands of dollars and hours that it took you to be able to deliver that hour of value. When a lawyer charges what they charge, it's not for the hour, it's for all the hours that it took to deliver an hour that's full of value. So remember that, and you start to think like that. You go, yeah, you know, I mean, I've spent 5 years or 10 years, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars, or whatever it is, to be able to sit with a person for an hour and do this work, or to show up at my place of employment and do this job. Wow, I have tremendous value. And you start to feel the value you bring. And then when you say it's $100, you'll actually start to feel, wow, that's a great deal, you know, whatever it is. When you hit that point where you've raised your price and you're like, dang, this is a great deal for them. Because look at all that I bring, look at who I am, look at what I've done. They don't have to spend the 5 years, the 10 years and read all these books and all these programs. I've done all that for them. So I can deliver this hour or this program or whatever. You get it? Like with this isn't just a few little videos. This is 2 decades of my life, of in the laboratory of my own life, almost dying twice, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and 10,000 hours for me to talk to you like this with a level of authority and clarity and specificity that is hopefully delivering a lot of value to you. So that's the way you start to think about your own work. The other thing you can do is you can think in terms of what else can I add to this offering that doesn't necessarily take a lot more time or cost a lot more on my part, but to them has a lot more value. And you just play with it. Again, it's beyond the scope of this to go into the whole way of how you do this, but as you play with it, you start to feel, you know what? I'm worth it. This is worth it. I can do this. And now you go and you ask, and you make that request, and you take that stand. You remember you're the source, they're the channel. You're giving them a chance to expand, to be a bigger channel, not just for you, but for everyone involved. And you turn that transactional relationship into a transformational one. You move from a zero-sum game or a zero-sum pie to an infinite-sum game where your exchange with that client has actually magnified the good for everyone. It hasn't taken away anything. It's actually expanded the pie for everyone. I'm getting chills when I think about that. Are you feeling this? Is this something pretty cool or what? Like, when you do this, you literally are expanding the pie rather than taking anything away. So again, don't wait to feel confident, comfortable, or to believe it. Do these little strategies we've talked about. Put together your offering, take the step, take the action. Step out on that invisible bridge and it will begin to appear beneath your feet. Now, as you do this, as I said, stuff comes up. The shadows, the selfish shadow, the arrogant shadow, the needy, greedy shadow, all these parts that we've been trying to keep down or pray away or ignore or project onto other people, all those rich people out there. And it starts to come up and it doesn't feel good. So again, you don't wait to fix all that to take these actions because as my story showed, you don't need to. You can still open up the channels and start a flood of abundance in your life. However, it's very important to continue to grow this and to sustain it, that you do have to address these shadows, these wealth shadows, and these values conflicts, and these underlying beliefs that are and will eventually sabotage your success. And in the final video, I'm going to show you how we're going to put all this together so that you get the kind of support and specific guidance to heal this stuff permanently. And it's important because even if you know all of this, if you don't address these pieces, like right now we've been talking a lot about how to accelerate the flow. It's like put your foot on the gas. We've been talking about how to speed up and accelerate the energy, accelerate the flow. It's just foot on the gas, right? But the problem is if you don't deal with these pieces, you've got your other foot on the brake. And you've got the gas full on, and you got the brake full on, and what do you get? You get tires burning rubber, you get the engine getting taxed, and eventually it stalls, it burns up, it breaks down. And so we want the foot on the gas, but we want to also take the foot off the brake. And dealing with these shadows and values conflicts is a critical component to that. Cool? So just take a deep breath. Just let all this soak in. Just kind of become aware of this expandedness. Everybody's a channel, everything. My life is just one wide open channel. I'm a channel, everybody's a channel. I have infinite possibilities, not just 1 or 2 or 5. And I can begin to meet people knowing they're not my source, they're my channel. And I can treat them like they are the above average student, that their capacity is infinite and inexhaustible, and in that way, I don't take anything from them. Our exchange expands the good for everyone. Just imagine if you could live like that. Imagine if you could model that for your friends, your family, your children, your own clients. What could be possible? I can tell you it's a revolution. Nothing less than a revolution. In your life, in your community, and on the planet. So I hope you'll really engage this, you'll really take it seriously, or I should say reverentially, because there's not really anything serious going on in the universe. It's one, it's whole, it's abundant. But that you really engage this and be an awakened wealth warrior. Take an action today. Share this with a friend, share it with a loved one, a client, send the link to somebody you know can be benefited by this. Teach it to somebody. What you share, you circulate and multiply. What you teach, you own. What you practice, you integrate and embody. So do something today. Take action. You know, action is our true religion. What we say and what we say we believe, that doesn't really prove anything. What we do, that shows us what we really believe, especially what we do consistently. And so take time and decide, where is your big ask this week? Who are you going to ask for something? Are you going to raise your rates? Are you going to ask for a raise? Are you going to ask your children for something, or your husband? Where's that ask for you this week? And comment below. Let us know, where are you going to ask? Where's going to be that moment, that action that you take to make a bigger ask on the universe? You know, you can't make a demand on life that exceeds your belief about it. Now that you know what's possible, it's time to make a bigger demand. Will you do that? So again, it's such a pleasure to be with you. You don't want to miss this next video, because coming up in this final video, we're going to show you how to put all this together into the Awakened Wealth Plan, or the Money Mastery Matrix, and how to really heal these sabotaging patterns that we talked about that will come up and put the brakes on your success, and ultimately how to put it all together and design an awakened wealth way of life so that this becomes permanent, it becomes habitual, it ultimately puts it all on autopilot. Your success, your growth. Just as easy as the things that show up in your life that you don't like, you'll begin to have it so that easily the things you do like and want begin to show up. How does that sound? Again, I thank you for being here. I really value your time. You could be doing so many other things, and you've chosen to step up and step into your destiny, to a greater opportunity, and I'm just deeply honored and really appreciate that. And I'll see you in the next video, but until then, remember to live authentically, to love unconditionally, and to follow your destiny. I'll see you soon.